Chapter 73. Kara. Quals is short for the National Qualification and Grading Metric of Arcane Talent and Studies. I suppose that NQGMATS is the less charismatic title. It's too long, and the letters don't fall together naturally. In every piece of test prep material that they tell you to use, the capital letters are forced into a smaller print so that it will all fit on one line of title space. It would be hilarious if the test itself wasn't so foreboding and ominous. There are very few other standardized tests that use the word qualification in their title, so calling the test quals doesn't really confuse anyone, though the long, scary initialism is the one that the teachers tend to use. Though some have taken to calling it the NAGMATS for short, it simultaneously demeans the test and drives the teachers crazy. Really, it is the best of both worlds. But a funny name and the casual disrespect doesn't stop the test from being scary. It doesn't stop the students from being remarkably quiet on the subject of silly names, trying to hide the prep books they brought either months too early or months too late. There's never any in between. It doesn't stop them from staying up late at night to cram information they already know, or buying those stupid luck totems. This test is scary. Placements can mean a lot for your academic career, for the positions you're eligible to apply for later. It has the power to design futures, and the power to get me kicked out. If I flub this bad enough, well, I don't have a family that will buy a new wing and have it all overlooked. Not that most of my classmates would be forced to leave the school because of a bad score. It's a hard test. Not many people actually do well, and it's hard enough to get a passing score that I'm scared I'm jinxing myself. Failing the test isn't bad, especially not as a first year. Usually it doesn't even mean much, just a lot more study books and a clap on the back to try harder next time. It doesn't mean you automatically scrub out of school. The test doesn't mean anything for your grades. It's an independent metric, something for the statisticians to analyze in this year's crop of information. It doesn't stop the test from being scary, from the creeping sense of dread that settles in the back of my head. None of that stops the stipulation in my scholarship that says I need at least a passing score. Above all, it doesn't stop the test from being today. There are no classes today. The whole school's almost shut down for the event. Walking through the halls is like some bizarre horror story. Most of the doors are locked, and there's no evidence of life. But there are people here. They're gathered outside of their proctor rooms, speaking only in the hushed whispers of the damned. The proctor rooms themselves aren't that bad. They're the same lecture halls that we use every day, but they aren't anymore. The large rooms are probably the only places in this whole school that could host exams of this magnitude. All the desks have been separated. Each small wooden slat and single uncomfortable chair has a test booklet with the opaque sticker holding the exam closed. This room, if I remember correctly, is the second year's evocation classroom. It's all theoretical and concept work with the lecture classes, but the room is almost a perfect mirror of the room Zaras Nietzsche uses for wand crafts. The windows are along one side of the room, but the heavy curtains have been drawn to prevent any natural light from coming in. I suppose it might be helpful. This exam usually takes all day. I have to wonder if students do better without watching the suns move across the sky while they aren't allowed to leave the room. It's probably helpful, but all it does is make me feel claustrophobic. The proctor is already here, another teacher that I don't know, an older woman. She doesn't turn to acknowledge the students as we come in. She just continues moving the chalk slowly across the board, making a column with the titles of the test sections, then another of numbers, times. It's kinda nice to know that we get warnings. Each section has a halfway and 3/4 warning to let us know we need to speed up and finish the damn thing. We even get a break in the middle for a snack. Isn't that nice? The proctor's desk is up front, just in front of the blackboards. She doesn't call for attention or even demand that students start taking their seats. She just opens her pocket watch and sets it beside her as she pulls out some kind of notebook and jots down some notes. I suppose she has no need to order us about. We still have a good bit of time before the exam starts. Some are already sitting down, picking their places for the remainder of the day, while others are milling about nervously. It's all sort of eerie, like someone's cast some kind of silencing spell. I've been with these people the entire semester. If you get this many in a room, then they aren't supposed to be this quiet. My eyes find Day across the room. He's already sitting in front of a booklet, trying his damnedest to ignore literally anyone that comes too close. He doesn't seem too interested in mingling, like Shauna is doing. She's got her little crowd around her. They're all speaking in hushed tones, like someone's going to say something to them if they get caught. No one does. No one dares. They're all too busy trying to find a little group of their own. Someone that will talk to them in the minutes they have left before the exam starts, doing anything to hear even the most pathetic platitudes. Who knows? Maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe it's just that they need to talk to someone before having to shut up for a day. It makes me miss Blue more. I told him it would be better if he stays home today. I'd asked Shauna and Day. They weren't bringing their familiars to the test day. I'm not condemning Blue to sit alone in the care center for the entire day. He should get the chance to stay at home and sleep, walk around, hell, eat without someone judging him for it. I pick a desk and sit, immediately wishing I hadn't, because it is so much worse. The whole of my perspective shifts, and it is so much more intimidating to be sitting down than standing. I feel defenseless, so much smaller and more at risk as my knees brush against the top of the wooden desk. I wonder if there's a way I can stretch out and not be bent like this for the entire day. But when I shift, the whole seat makes a tortured creaking noise, and I immediately stop any movement. I thank whatever luck the stars have deigned to give me that everyone's so wrapped up in their own shit that they don't seem to notice me. But suddenly, I can't muster the ability to stand back up. I've resigned myself to my seating arrangement when Genevieve perches herself on the back of the chair in front of me. I don't see her usual crew with her, and she does take a casual glance around before she turns to me. I don't know whether I should be thankful or insulted that she doesn't want her friends to see her talking with me. "Hey, Genevieve." I smile as sweetly as I can. "I'm so glad I got to see you before all this got started. I wanted to wish you luck." It's almost worth it to see the way that she grinds her teeth to smile back at me. "I hope you feel lucky too, especially after the way your pet was mouthing off." She says it with such a practiced, saccharine tone I have to wonder if it's ever actually made someone overlook the terrible things she says. "What?" I ask, quirking my head to the side and letting my eyes go wide. I don't actually know what she's talking about, but damned if I'm going to let her see how shocked I am by the news. There's plenty of things that Blue could have said, even more that have come back to me as rumors and other less tantalizing pieces of gossip. Most of the time he sticks to the stories I want him to use, but my peers are getting desperate for good gossip. Just a few days ago, some guy had come up to me with a story about how Blue said there was no special trick to my casting or how I survived in the forest battle. He'd spoken with such a scandalized tone that I think he wanted me to be genuinely mad that my familiar didn't worship the ground I walk on and sing my praises with every breath. "Oh, you didn't know?" she asks with so much fake concern that I have to wonder who she thinks she's fooling. She looks away demurely and taps a finger to her lips like she's actually thinking hard about this. "I thought it was just one of the things you told him to say." It's a pretty serious accusation, that I'm coaching my familiar on what to say so the rumor mill doesn't grind him into tiny little pieces. It's true, but that's beside the point. Suddenly, it makes a little more sense that she wanted to talk to me without her friends around. She can't get away with being this overt with people listening. Well, I suppose I never told him to keep quiet. I figured people didn't hang around the care center listening to what familiars say. I bite my lip as I look away from her like I'm embarrassed. I let my fingers drum against the desk in some kind of nervous gesture. I'm glad I'm biting my lip, because I doubt I would be able to keep the smile from curling across my face at the indignant blush that spreads across Genevieve's. "I was showing my parents around the school." She rushes to defend herself. "We had some visitors, representatives of the Promenade Initiative. Apparently your little kitty seems to have a lot of faith in you. Talked you up pretty good." I feel my blood go cold at that. The Promenade Initiative. It's one of the most basic governmental recruiting programs. It's held in high regard. They deal with all kinds of people, so it's not very exclusive, but they are responsible for matching people to the internships and career opportunities that they wouldn't be able to find on their own. There's levels to its reach, but they have their fingers in a lot of pies. If someone was checking out the school, and just before quals, I don't even want to know what they're planning. It's probably not as dangerous as I'm making it out to be, but I can't ignore the very real possibility that someone might recognize me. There are already too many people in this city that could. Blue hadn't said anything to me about this, about someone coming up to him or talking about me to any strangers that came into the care center. Then again, he hasn't been saying much of anything to me lately. He was probably just... I've been studying a lot around him. He probably hopes that means something, I admit, trying to pull my thoughts back in line. It's not quite a lie. I've been busy. I have been studying, but more than that, I've been using every waking moment to try and fix Jet's problem. Something that's only made worse by the fact that I know I could have gotten it if I just kept going last night. But no, stupid life-altering tests get in the way. I can't afford to throw this semester, my whole school career, away by coming in and falling asleep on this exam. "Yeah, well, good luck, Kara." The words come out like they physically pain her. "Who knows? If you place well, you just might get some interested parties. Wouldn't that be fun?" She leaves with a weak, humorless smile as she turns to find a desk. I smile back at her and try not to let myself take it too personally. It's not like she knows how desperately I want to avoid the attention. She's coming at it from the wrong angle. After all, why wouldn't I be grateful to get noticed? It's what everyone else wants. Before long, the proctor calls for us all to find a seat. Everyone shuffles like they're dead already, but after those ceiling stickers break, it's like the whole world melts away. For all the headaches, all the prep and late studying in the library, the actual exam passes in a haze. I have to wonder if it's designed that way, some kind of occluding charm that makes you forget just as soon as you're finished, to prevent students from conducting an autopsy of their performances. By the end, I can't say whether I did well or failed it outright, and I can't bring myself to care. It's out of my hands now. I've done all I can, and in the end, it will either be enough or it won't. I'm more concerned with the fragments of a song that's stuck in my head. It's playing on repeat like it's trying to drive me mad. I didn't think much of it, but the more I try to think about it, the more I can taste blood at the back of my throat, feel sand in my shoes. It's all one big ache until I just turn my attention away from the tune altogether. By the time I get back home, I want to collapse. But I don't give myself that luxury. I've still got work to do. I still have to finish that compound. It feels like there's a part of me that's fractured in the testing room. It's all so laughable in retrospect. I have work to do. Actual work that people's lives depend on. How could I be so focused on a stupid little test? My mind flashes to the look of suffering that had painted the faces of my peers. Like they knew anything about pain, about suffering. I get a desperate and wretched urge to laugh. There's a dull ache in the back of my neck, and I feel my fingertips go numb for a second as I realize I've been humming along with the tune. I have work to do. If nothing else, my work might be able to drive this wretched song from my head. I've set up a collection of growing jars with the samples of soil that Jet sent me. The seeds of the staple crops that he'd sent along with the samples are better indicators than anything I've got lying around. After all, I suppose it doesn't matter much if I can't make the soil grow something that can survive in the biome. I cycle through years once I'm confident, sending the crop through a number of growing seasons until I make myself sick with all the mana I'm using. The blight isn't fixed. Not truly. But at least I have something. The compound isn't too terribly unstable, nor does it require someone with magic to activate it or put it together, just like the majority of potions. There are some components that would be harder to come by, definitely more expensive than it would be feasible for them to collect en masse. But it's not hard to find some replacements that don't utterly ruin the effectiveness. I can't seem to extend the viability for more than 3 years, or rather 3 growing seasons. But there doesn't seem to be much of a side effect of using the same compound again in that time. Either way, it certainly buys enough time for better people to fix this problem. The white paper is easy to write. It's all the work that I've been carefully collecting, my notes and tests. The chemical recipe goes at the end, just after the instructions for effective use. They won't have to use much per square acre, but it has to be well incorporated. Otherwise, the blighted pockets can still wreck a crop. There's an overwhelming sense of relief that goes through me as I cinch the binding clip over the report. It's over, at least for now. I don't have to worry about this anymore. It'll be someone else's problem after I settle this, and they can clear it all up better than I could with a better facility and not so many sleepless nights. My little band-aid over the bullet wound doesn't feel like much, but I know they wouldn't even try to fix something like the blight. I hope it gives them hope, or at the very least a reason to investigate further. If there's any way we can heal the land, it's our responsibility to look into it. I stare down at the blank cover page. I need to fill it in. I know that. I need to fill it in and put it with the package of pre-made drought that I've already made and send it off before anyone else gets hurt. But I can't sign my name. I certainly can't sign Kara, first-year magic student with no background who hasn't even picked a focus yet. Suddenly I'm engulfed by the overwhelming need to be somewhere else, anywhere else. But I catch myself before I let the fantasy go any further. I put down roots this time. People would notice if I suddenly went missing. I can't even go out. As much as I crave the time away, pretending that none of the craziness that has become my life belongs to me, I can't just leave Blue. I've been doing enough of that lately. It would be irresponsible and wrong to leave him behind, and I wouldn't even be able to enjoy myself because I'd be worried about him the whole time. There's an ache in my chest as I remember my promise from just a few days ago. I told him that we'd be spending time together once Qualls was over, and I've already broken that promise. Stars, I wasn't even thinking. Blue's got to be so pissed at me. After all that and having to sit through the testing day alone, and I just blew him off to do more work in my lab? I close my eyes and try to stave off the headache I can feel incoming. Why do I have to be so bad with people? It was like this with Shauna, too. When the school had made us mandated friends, I didn't think she'd care if we were actually on friendly terms. I figured that she would be the usual mage class stuck-up spoiled child. I'd been right on a few counts, but she'd always wanted us to be close. It took me a long time to warm up to her, and even longer to realize that she'd get hurt when I locked myself away for days at a time. I don't like making people hurt. I just happen to be very good at it. Blue's been odd these past few days. Despondent doesn't cover it, though he has been low-spirited. Maybe it's just because I didn't have much time to spend with him, but it seems like more than that. He's been jumpy, nervous. His smiles show too many teeth, and his hands shake. Maybe he'd do good with some time away from home as well. I can fulfill that burning desire within me and spend some time with him, all in one fell swoop. I don't know exactly what's wrong, but I can't imagine some time outside could make it any worse. I fiddle with my illusion pendant, just letting my fingers roll over the cool beads. It could get worse. As much as I hate the thought, it actually could get worse for Blue outside. I'm lucky that Shauna helped me find the spa that allowed familiars. I don't really know any other establishments that allow pets. It would be so much easier if we could just really be two different people. If we could walk out of this house as two strangers this city had never seen. Just for a day. Just for a few hours. We could be different people without all our baggage, without all the responsibilities. Isn't that an entertaining thought? It would be so much easier. I'm startled out of my thoughts by the soft knocking at my door. I hadn't noticed Blue getting close, but suddenly he's standing right by the door frame, hand still raised from where he'd knocked. He's tense, his whole body drawn into a tight line as he pulls his hand back to his chest. He's not looking at me. His eyes are on the floor, brows furrowed like there's something particularly interesting there. "Blue?" I call as gently as I can. I try to ignore the flinch that comes with it, the way his ears fold back flat against his head. But he at least looks up at me. I don't like the fear in his eyes. He pulls both hands to his chest as he curls in on himself, his cheeks flushing like he wasn't expecting to be acknowledged. I just give him a smile as I wave him into the room. Blue moves quietly, as gracefully as always, but I can see the nervousness in the twitchy movements of his tail. I hate seeing him like this, but I know it's my fault. "I shouldn't have disturbed you," Blue says to the carpet, and I can't help the twinge of guilt that comes at the sight. "No, I'm glad you came in." I stand up, ready to give him a hug and apologize for being an idiot this past week and a half, but the movement must have come too fast because he takes a step back before I can advance. His hip knocks the table behind him, and I know it has to hurt, but he just presses a hand to his hip and bites his lip. I pull my hand back, letting it fall uselessly by my side. Blue's usually so much more comfortable in the house. He's always been a bit of a homebody, but it's more than that. I've worked hard to let him know he's safe here, that, if nothing else, in a world that doesn't seem to care about him, he should feel safe at home. Hell, he's the whole reason I started calling Lorraine's house a home. Maybe he needs the time away as much as I do. Well, I was wondering if there was something specific that you want for dinner tonight." Blue shifts, toeing at the carpet underfoot. "No," I answer cautiously. I don't want Blue to be puttering around like a servant. He's done enough of that to himself in the past few days. As little time as I've spent upstairs, I can recognize the amount of cleaning he's been doing. There's not a speck of dust or a smudge on a window to be found in the whole house. My fingers go to the pendant around my neck again. It took me months to make it, and that was when I had access to all the proper components. Plus, I had a supervisor who actually knew what they were doing. It wouldn't work. I will myself to let it go already. I consider Blue for a moment. Of the familiars I've seen, and I have seen a lot of weird familiars, he's definitely one of the more human-ish. He doesn't have scales or patches of fur, no wings to cover up, or sensitive antennae that could be hurt. It wouldn't work. Could it? "Oh, you don't?" Blue stammers, a soft pink flush coming to his cheeks as he stares down at his feet. "I just thought maybe you'd like something special, given how big a day today was." "No, you're right, Blue," I say absently as I close the distance between us. I want the excuse. I want to take him out, show him a good time, and maybe leave just a fragment of this whole nightmare behind. "We should celebrate." I lay my hand over the flat of Blue's stomach, near but not over the hip that he's just injured, measuring as best I can with my hand width. Blue may be short and skinny, but we aren't that different in size. If nothing else, I could probably... Master? Blue's stuttering voice makes me look up, and it's only then that I realize his whole face is flushed red. I cup his cheek in my palm, halfway through checking for a fever, before I realize how this must look. Oh, stars! I yank my hands away and put them back at my side. The hell was I thinking? Sorry, Blue, I'm out of my mind, and my brain hasn't been functioning since the test this morning. No, no! He cuts me off, fumbling with the hem of his shirt. He's halfway through stripping when I press my hands to his, pulling his shirt back down. Blue, I was actually thinking of something else. I can't stop the chuckle that rises from me, but is it just my imagination that he wilts at the reassurance? Oh! He keeps his hands fisted in his shirt as he goes back to examining the complex pattern of my single-color rug. I'm just about done in here. Why don't you meet me upstairs? I ask. If you could find me that wide belt and some pants, that would be great. I add absently as I push the stuff on my desk into a more orderly arrangement. Stars no. I'll have to do a thorough cleaning in here before the week is out. I can't send the package for Jet tonight. By the time I'd gotten out of the test, any office that could handle that would have been closed. I'll have to wait for tomorrow, no matter what. I just hope I'll have a solution by then. You're changing, Master? Blue asks, the question jolting me out of my thoughts. Well, maybe, I answer. I definitely don't look my best, and a shower would be nice, too. I thought it would be nice if we went out tonight. Out? Blue echoes, his ears quirking in the same way they always do when he's confused. Just find me the clothes. I'll explain everything when I get up there. Okay? I smile, and though Blue doesn't smile back, he does nod as he starts making his way up the stairs. I'm sure a night out is just what we need. The test ended just an hour before the first sun slipped past the horizon. With all the time that I spent finishing the formula, it was very firmly night by the time we made it out of the house. There aren't many places open, but that just means it's not hard to find the kind of place we're looking for. I don't have many requirements, but I'd prefer a place with music, a dance floor, maybe even a functional kitchen. Master? Blue's voice pipes up, pitifully quiet behind me as he clutches onto the back of my shirt. Come on, Blue. I pull him forward, not dislodging the hand from my shirt, but ensuring that he at least walks beside me instead of behind. I told you to only use Kara tonight, okay? I remind him gently, pressing a quick kiss to the top of his head. Master, this is very improper, he whispers against my side for what must be the 10th time in as many minutes. While I'm sure it's not orthodox, I don't think anyone could say it's outright improper. Blue's fully covered. Not that it stopped people from parading their pets around half naked. Really, that's an indecency. Blue wearing my clothes shouldn't even register on that scale. The pants were too baggy and too long, but thank the stars for that, otherwise I doubt he ever would have been able to fit his tail in there. He's got one of my shirts, too, a plain button-down, but he'd tucked it in so the resulting puffiness of the ensemble is not something I'd have ever expected from my clothes. Despite the fact that he should look drowned by my clothes, I have to say he wears them rather well. He's rolled up the pant leg so he isn't constantly tripping, and the resulting buckle-over is fairly cute. He looks like one of those art students, always too skinny, wearing clothing that's too big. All he's missing is a brush tucked up in his hair. I didn't have many hats, but the overly large cap had filled the job just as well as anything else. Better, because of all the floppy fabric. It was big enough to fit over Blue's ears, and thin enough to fit the pins I'd placed, just in case. You look something like Cinna Crush, but that's not too terrible, I admit. only drawing the connection now. But Blue's clothes are much cleaner, and he'll get the option of changing out of them tonight. "Cinna crush?" he asks, eyes wide as he searches my face for a clue as to what I'm trying to allude to. "She's a character from a book that's named after her." It's something that's placed somewhere in every secondary school reading list, a classic. But I keep forgetting that Blue doesn't exactly have a way to know that. "Maybe I should read it sometime." He smiles weakly as he loosens his grip on me and shoves his hands in his pockets. I don't want to say no outright, but given the fact that Cinna Crush is the story about an orphan who nearly starves to death and is taken advantage of by an archaic system, then essentially sold into an apprenticeship, I don't think I'm going to let him read it without supervision at least. It's a hard enough subject for kids. I don't need it triggering something for Blue. "What's the matter, Blue? You don't like my clothes?" I prod dramatically, and Blue's cheeks go pink once again. "They're very nice, but I don't think I should be wearing them out like this, He answers demurely, but I cut him off before he can finish. "Kara," I remind him, and he bites his lip as he glances away. "Kara," he agrees with a stutter as he brushes his hand against mine. It's a subtle motion, but it's one I recognize, so I let my pinky curl around his. He doesn't acknowledge the contact, but he does look a little less afraid. At the very least, he's not looking down at the street anymore. Most of the shops are closed for the night, but the streetlights in this district are done up artfully, and there are plenty of vendors out, so it should at least be a little more interesting than just staring at the ground. Not many of the vendors will stay here, but they'll do a final lap through their home territory at the end of the night, just a few hours before the first sun begins to rise. They'll catch any stragglers working too late on their projects in the studio the school provides, but for now, they're just barely setting out. "Blue, have you ever tried candied hickory nuts?" I ask, a little giddy because I'm fairly certain I know the answer. When Blue predictably shakes his head, I direct us over to the heavenly smell of burnt sugar coming from the cart. The man's cordial enough, very kindly ignoring the way Blue clings to the back of my shirt and only stares at the ground, never saying a word to him. He's on his way before I can really worry he's noticed something is up. It might have been easy to disguise Blue's features, but if he keeps acting like this, eventually someone's going to say something. And it's probably going to be reporting a possible kidnapping to the nearest envy. I coax Blue to let up his death grip on my shirt with a patient hand and press the still warm wax paper bag into it before he can say anything. He only looks at me, startled for a moment, before seemingly realizing that the bag contains the snack I'd promised him. We don't look like a couple of friends out for the night. He looks like, well, to be frank, he looks like a kidnapping victim who hasn't been let outside in a few years. He looks like someone who's been abused, forced to walk around with his captor. There's a stinging pain in my eyes, and I have to blink away the tears as I realize that it's true. In the most literal sense, that is what's happening here. Blue wasn't let outside much, and when he was a toy on display. He's probably jumping at every shadow because he doesn't fully realize how safe his disguise is keeping him. The cordial way people are greeting us, the way their gaze moves on instead of lingering on the familiar trailing behind. He probably doesn't know that these people would call an envy for him, not to put him in some pound, but to get him away from someone dangerous. Blue pops one of the sugar-sticky treats in his mouth, and I'm so caught up in my train of thought I almost miss the glorious moment the sugar hits his system. The look of unadulterated pleasure and surprise that comes over him and entirely melts away that fearful, distant look he's had in his eyes since we left the house. "So I take it you like them?" I chuckle, and it's all Blue can do to nod vigorously. "They made something like this almost every year, but it was a pastry. It had this soft golden crust, and it was the best thing in the world," Blue explains, the smile reaching his eyes as he shoves another piece in his mouth before offering the bag to me. "No, no, that's for you." I wave off his offer, too enraptured by the sugar-fueled joy that's so contagious I can feel a smile coming across my face even without tasting it. Blue gives a half-hearted whine, but it's hard to believe that he's actually upset when his cheeks are all puffed up with the sweets. Candied hickory nuts are something of a seasonal treat. However, it is unusual that Blue would have heard about them. "You've had hickory nut pie before?" I can't help the incredulity in my voice. Considering the fact that Blue hasn't gotten regular access to good food, I'm a little surprised that this would be one of the few things that Blue's tried before. "Yeah, Miss Borda was allergic, but they were always hosting parties, so she had to have it in the house. But after everyone went away, Mr. Borda said I could have some of the leftovers if I was really careful and thanked him properly for the treat. It was the best." Blue's radiant smile doesn't dim in the slightest, but I feel my smile die. I look around at the other vendors still setting up their carts and try to find something else for Blue to try. It's not fair for me to ruin a good moment for him just because I feel bad. I have him try Caro on a stick and Yerga seeds and sweet cream. I take him to the tiny, barely acre-long park with its fish pond and the copious amount of sculptures spread over too small a space. Artist's Alley is a fine place to visit, but not really a nice place to live. The district isn't bad, but the residents have done their fair share to make it look better than it is. It's helped by the fact that there are 2 different art institutes that operate in this area. As such, it's beautifully decorated, even when the area itself is still pretty run down. But I chose it specifically so that we would have no chance of running into someone from my school. The night after Qualls, I wouldn't be surprised if most of my peers were out drinking, but none of them would drag themselves down to where the commoners party. Unfortunately, none of them will ever know that it's the commoners who know how to party. You could throw a stone on this street and find a better party than those pompous nobles could ever throw. Thankfully, I don't have to start slinging rocks. There's a nice place not too far away from the park. The sign's actually glowing in the darkness. I have to assume it's some kind of glow-in-the-dark paint, but it seems nice enough. Leonine, or perhaps the Leonine, is more of a pub than a club. There's no dangerous-looking bouncer outside or wall-to-wall crowding on a night like this, but they seem to have live music and that glow-in-the-dark theme. I don't think I've ever seen so many neon gas cylinders in one place. Leave it to the artists. Discover one thing for science, and they'll find a way to put it to better use. Hell, they'll make it look like it was never meant for anything else. Just like the dichroic glass they'd made for deep-sea explorations. It tempered in different patterns when exposed to certain types of magic. Low mana draws and control requirements, so that made it the perfect medium for low-born mages trying to make something sellable. It made gorgeous jewelry. But, to be fair, anything would be better than a mana croft. "Kara, if we—" Blue clutches at the back of my shirt. He's still whispering, but I can hear the tinge of fear that's coloring his voice. "Blue, I promised you a good time. You don't have to be scared." I draw my arm around his shoulders and pull him forward until he's standing next to me again. I wonder if this was too much, too fast. He'd been having fun, but nearly all the tension has come flooding back into his body in an instant. I certainly don't want him to have a panic attack here, but this is a relatively low-profile place. The colors might not be muted, but the clientele are, and in a place this full of shadows, it should be relatively easy to stay inconspicuous if we want to be wallflowers tonight. "I shouldn't be dressed like this." He stumbles over his words, his eyes flitting anxiously to the people in the room he can see. It's a fair point. He's dressed specifically so that people don't know he's my familiar. but at the moment I just can't bring myself to care. If no one noticed outside, then there's nearly no chance of someone noticing in this room that's mostly shadows. Blue had been having fun outside. He'd had the chance to walk around without being judged for who he is for the first time in his life. If a change of clothes is all it takes to earn that kind of respect, then I think Blue's looking at this the wrong way. If nobody outright asks, then it's not really a problem, is it? What they don't know won't hurt them. If they assume, that's their mistake to make. I don't mind Blue reaping the rewards of someone's snap judgment for a change. But apparently, Blue does. Immediately his posture changes. He was nervous before, but suddenly he's tense like a bowstring. His hands shake so he presses them together so tightly that I can see his fingers going white. He turns to me, his eyes so wide and fearful that I'm surprised he hasn't already collapsed into his usual rhetoric of pleas for forgiveness against some imagined slight. I don't know what I've said this time to provoke this kind of a reaction, but I can't have him freaking out like a familiar when he's dressed like a human. I take Blue's hand in mine, pulling him towards anywhere that's even remotely private, but he pulls against me, stopping me in my tracks. When I look back, I can see the tears gathering in his eyes as he struggles to raise his face to meet mine. I'm sorry for what I did. I know it. I was bad, but... Blue starts, so quietly that I feel my heart break. I don't know what memory is playing in his head right now, but it makes my chest ache as he tries to curl in on himself a little more with each second that passes. No, Blue, we're here to have fun, all right? I whisper as I pull him close, planting a kiss to the top of his hat. If I ever run into any of Blue's old masters, I don't think I'll be able to keep myself from throwing a punch. Blue looks up at me with disbelief clear in his eyes, but at least he doesn't advance to some of the really disquieting begging that he sometimes gets to. He's not shaking anymore, but there's a leftover tremble in his fingers that I don't address as I take his hand, an act that he seems to find shocking, despite just about everything we've been through together. There's a band playing, the music's fast-paced and happy, and there seems to be no real style of dance required. Most of the patrons seem to be fine just jumping around wildly, swinging their arms to the beat. It's a far cry from the ordered structure of Genevieve's ballroom, the rehearsed classical pieces that her band played, and the line of dance that everyone knew to follow. This is messy and improvisational. There's no defined genre, and sure as hell no proper dance that goes with this kind of music. I couldn't ask for anything more perfect. I sit Blue down on one of the bar stools, thankfully too tall and too narrow a seat for him to risk sitting all curled up like he usually does. So he just sits there, finding a perch for his feet on one of the higher rungs of the stool, and keeps his hands in his lap. "How can I help you, sirs?" the bartender asks, and I try my damnedest not to notice the way Blue flinches at the title. I have to wonder how far everyone's taking this whole neon blacklight theme, because even she has a stripe of fluorescent pink across the bridge of her nose like it's war paint. Then again, almost all the staff have some kind of paint on them, even some of the people dancing. "We'll have..." I stop as I realize I can't recognize anything on the menu. The place has taken its theme a little too far, and renamed all the mixed drinks. "Whatever you recommend." "Not from around here, are you?" She quirks a little grin as she starts pouring different bottles of liquor into her cocktail shaker along with a scoop of ice without even looking. "No, we're new in town," I lie. "Just looking for a little fun." "Well, you came to the right place." She smiles, pulling out 2 matching vials of thick pink fluorescent liquid. "Your uniforms, should you choose to accept it." She slides one over to me, but falters as she places the other vial in front of Blue. The movement startled him into looking up, and I doubt she was expecting the unease he's still trying to shake off from one of her patrons. "Don't have to put it on if you don't want to, but it's fun." She smiles at him, tapping her finger to the corked top before she goes back to making our drinks. Blue picks up the vial, swirling the liquid around, and I can't help but feel relieved to see that he's not entirely opposed to the idea. I wanted this to be fun for us, just a night of being someone else. I want him to have fun, and I figured we could finally have that dance I've been promising. I don't feel right making him wait until it's his birthday. We can call this a practice run. I grab the drinks and slide the bartender a couple extra coins for her understanding as I find a nice table off to the side of the dance floor. Blue follows, still rolling the thick paste back and forth in the glass tube, seemingly entranced by the way the glowing liquid moves. "You want some help with that?" I ask, uncorking my own vial. It's not a cosmetic that I'm familiar with, but I can see how it could be fun. The paste spreads slowly, but I can manipulate it to make some pretty drip effects down my arms, a couple of dots on my face that are more accident than design. "Kara, why are we here?" Blue's voice wavers for a moment, but he doesn't take his eyes off the rolling liquid in the vial. "Well," I stumble over my own words. What the hell am I supposed to say to that? "I wanted to take you out, and I've never danced to this kind of music before," I answer. It's not like I planned this, but for all of tonight coming together at the last minute, it seems to be going fairly well. I don't recognize the drinks the bartender gave us, but one smells significantly more alcohol-based than the other. I know I'm being overly cautious, but I still mutter the spell under my breath, feeling foolish when there's nothing more dangerous than the booze in there. "Neither have I." Blue's voice brings me back to the present. He says it like it's a secret, like it's something to be ashamed of. I'm not imagining the trepidation in his voice, but for once I think I actually know the cause. Blue is a very well-trained dancer, classically trained, for entertainment, but this is something very different. This is all well outside his established comfort zone. "Good! We'll be on equal footing." I can't help but laugh at the shocked look Blue gives me. "I don't know the steps," Blue confesses as his eyes flit from dancer to dancer, as if he's trying to discern the common steps in the movements he has. But I just pass him the less potent of the two drinks. The observation is not going to help, but I don't mind giving him a little time. He even sips at the drink and allows me to paint his face and wrists with the fluorescent paint. I may have a little more experience with this genre of music, but I'm absolutely hopeless when it comes to dancing to it. There is no order, only a madness and appreciation for chaos that I don't think I'll ever be able to truly master. Blue and I both come from classical training, and that is worthless here. There's no perfect way to do it, but I have a feeling that's the point. I think it's just supposed to exhaust you, make you throw your body around until you don't care that the steps are wrong, until you can feel the resonance of the music in your chest and all those little worries about doing things right go away. I've never gotten there, but it's something I want Blue to experience. Not getting it right doesn't mean failure, and who better to teach him than a bunch of sleep-deprived art students who are all doing their best to follow the same path? There could not be a lower-stakes scenario. Literally no one knows us, and what's more, nobody cares. "Don't worry. No matter what you do, someone's going to say that you're doing it wrong," I joke as I pull him out onto the dance floor. Except that's not really true. Blue might not know what he's doing, but he has an impeccable sense of rhythm and a lifetime's worth of training. He doesn't have choreography to follow, but that doesn't stop his movements from being graceful. It doesn't stop him from being... Stars. This is supposed to be a fun night. He doesn't need this from you right now. Individual songs fade in and out as we dance, but I can't for the life of me keep them straight until the music starts to slow. It sounds like the closest the band will ever get to a foxtrot, and Blue finds his way into my arms. Moving back into territory we know is just as nice as the frenetic energy of the earlier dances. Better, probably, because now Blue's smiling, happy and blessedly relaxed, even though he's covered in pink and in a room full of strangers. So, of course, I have to go and ruin it. There's a sudden flare of pain in my hip, and I know the moment it hits me that it wasn't really all that sudden. I'd felt the ache, the warning I was overstressing the old injury, but I'd chosen not to acknowledge it. We were having fun. I didn't want to stop that. And yet the flare of white has me stumbling, my leg locking up as I fall into Blue. Before I have the chance to say anything, Blue's already looking me over with worry in his eyes as I use him to stay upright. "Are you all right?" he asks breathlessly. I hate the worry in his voice. I know I shouldn't. It's concern. I should be touched. But it's just a reminder of the joy that had been there only moments ago. "I'm fine. Just..." I suck in a breath through my teeth before I force my leg to take my weight like it's supposed to. "You want a drink?" I offer. It's a sloppy cover, but I don't want to ruin the whole night. Yeah. Blue nods shyly, and I turn, forcing my leg to hold underneath me as I make my way back to the bar. Blue's right behind me, ready to offer me help, even if it's just to get onto the bar stool. I don't need help. I just need a couple of minutes for the muscle to stop locking up, for the pain to dissipate. Blue just stays by my side with the same worried look that I'm betting would still have persisted even if I would have let him help me. One of the waiters deposits a short-stemmed glass in front of Blue. For a second, I'm confused. We haven't ordered yet. But before I can ask, they must see the question on my face. "From the man in the corner." They nod to a far table before disappearing as quickly as they appeared. I can see the guy in question. He seems all right. Maybe a few too many empty cups on his table, but he's there with friends. They don't seem to be keeping that close an eye on him, though. He gives a little wave, like Blue could see him across the room. Well, I can see the gesture, but I'm trying really hard. Blue's not even turned in the right direction. He's still facing the bartender. I feel the jealousy resting heavy and ugly in my chest. It's stupid. Blue's not even looking. But that doesn't do anything to quell the roiling emotions. My fingertips feel numb, and I have the absurd urge to go turn the guy into a newt. I'm not even that great at transmutation. Maybe there was more alcohol in that drink than I thought. "Well, Blue, look who's getting hit on!" I try to make my tone playful and bury the stupid jealousy as best I can. Blue shouldn't have to deal with that. He's not used to positive attention. I should be encouraging him, not forcing him to stay away from these people. I would have thought Blue would be embarrassed, or maybe a little confused, but when I turn to look at him, there's no red on his cheeks. He looks pale as a ghost. "I'm sorry," he whispers, but I don't let him finish whatever thought he's having. "No, don't be sorry. I'm not..." There's a strangled, keening noise, and I have to stop myself. "Blue, you are beautiful, and every single person in this place should be making a pass at you, even with someone else on your arm." I say it like the indisputable fact that it is. At the very least, it gets some color back in Blue's cheeks. On an entirely separate note, never accept a drink. Just don't. You don't know what could be in it. I stumble through the warning, but it seems to have landed. Blue just nods solemnly. I figure I don't have to go too far into detail. Blue knows the dangers of getting drugged. Somehow, I doubt he would have thought that regular people faced the same dangers. Blue pushes the drink aside, pulling himself up onto the chair next to me. He takes a moment to scrub at the neon paint, somehow managing to smudge it more than remove any of it. "I don't actually mind setting off, Kara." He lets his fingertips brush mine. The gesture is surprisingly intimate. Just the light touch sending a jolt of warmth through me. "Without you, the dancing's not that entertaining." He continues like nothing's happened. "All right, then." I chuckle to myself, letting my fingers twine with his. "I don't mind heading home." Blue hands the drink over to the bartender while I try to rub the ache out of my hip. It's not too bad. It could have been a lot worse. The stiffness is mostly gone, but it will be sore for the next few hours. It shouldn't be too much of a problem to walk on it. The real issue is tomorrow. Outside, it's just as dark as when we'd left. I have no way of knowing how much time has passed, but I have to assume it's been a number of hours. The air is colder than when we went in. I can see my breath. I wind my scarf around Blue. It's not much, but he doesn't have his bulky coat on him, and he's never been good with the cold. If Blue happens to look unbearably cute bundled up in my clothes, well, that's really just a side benefit, isn't it? "Hey!" a voice calls, jerking me out of my thoughts. Blue stumbles back a step or two, and it takes me a second for my eyes to focus on the person who's pulled him back. It's the guy from the back corner, though he's suspiciously lacking any of the friends he might have come in with. He's got Blue by the arm, grinning like an idiot as he tries to wave Blue back into the building. "If you'd excuse me, I'd like a dance." He stumbles through his words, not drunk to the point that he's actually slurring, but he's certainly not sober. He's not thinking straight. It would be bad form to knock him on his ass, I remind myself. But that position gets steadily harder to defend when Blue just stares at him with wide, frightened eyes. Blue's just getting used to the concept of no, and this whole situation is probably not the best way to start him off. "He wouldn't," I answer sharply, as Blue tries to dislodge the drunk from his arm. "Hey, he can speak for himself. Just 'cause you can't keep up doesn't mean he shouldn't have a good time." His glare is bleary and unfocused as he shifts to me, but Blue flinches beside him. It takes me a second to realize that the idiot's tightened the hand he's got on Blue, and it's all my familiar can do to try and loosen his grip. "We were just leaving," Blue says, just a shade away from a whimper, but this dick doesn't seem to notice. "What was that, baby?" he asks, pulling Blue even closer, even as Blue recoils. "We were on our way out," I say through gritted teeth, my resolve to not punch this man fading fast. "Hey!" He turns to me, his face drawn up in an angry scowl. "You don't get to talk to me like that. You might think you can control your little boy toy, but—" And suddenly, I don't care what he was going to say. "Enough!" My voice crackles as I cut him off, and I see white. I won't have him saying anything rude to Blue. The whole point of tonight was to have a nice time together. Blue's been having fun. He hasn't had to deal with being anything more than a friend for the whole night. I won't stand for some dickhead like this guy who thinks he's entitled to a dance, ruining our fun. I just wanted a night that we could pretend to be nothing more than friends. Fuck trauma, fuck responsibilities, and fuck propriety. We deserve a night to ourselves." His eyes go wide as he drops Blue's arm. He takes a couple of slow steps back before he turns and takes off in a full sprint. There's something sick inside me that's delighted by the turn of events, that wants me to go after him and... "Kara?" I startle at the sound of Blue's voice, turning to him without a second thought. I'm surprised when the white haze is still there when my eyes find him. It takes me longer than it should to realize that the murky light is very much a real glow by my feet. There's a magic circle scorched into the brick walkway. I can see the blackened char just below the faint light. It's not a real magic circle. It's almost something like a lotus, several tiny petals instead of a completed circle. There's no traditional symbols, but it's still glowing faintly, and when I look directly down at it, I feel nauseous. "We should go," I mumble to myself more than anything. I'm not entirely sure how to discharge the energy, but the shock it gives me for not doing it right isn't so bad. The burn marks look something like projected radials. Maybe some new kind of art project that someone put up in the night? Either way, no one would look at that and think, magic. So I just go along with it as Blue takes my hand and we walk as casually as we can away from the scene. Stars. I haven't had trouble with wild magic in a while. I thought I was getting better about that. It isn't every day that I perform summons in my sleep or evoke the elements when I'm stressed, but the exercises had detailed that wild magic isn't really that rare of an issue for mages, especially those who aren't that far along in their training and lack control. I might worry less if it was just standard branches or related to specific emotions, but my magic doesn't always follow a predictable pattern. What's more, there's no weirdness when I cast regularly. Most mages that struggle with wild surges will have issues in one or more schools or magic types, but given the proper tools and enough prep time, I don't have issues with any specific type of casting. I'm capable of casting without anything going wrong, but when I'm not thinking about it, the exact type of magic, the school, the specific spell, I wind up with weird things. Like using ice in a battle with a forest god when I didn't evoke the element. Or a casting circle without runes. I'm so lost in thought that I don't even notice when Blue stops moving. I just barrel right into his back and nearly knock the both of us over. I'm about to ask why he stopped when he presses a finger to his lips and pulls me into the tiny alley next to us. "Do you hear those bells?" he whispers, biting his lip nervously like he might be the one going crazy. I do hear the chanting, the rhythmic clanging of the string of bells, but there was some part of me that assumed it was all in my head. It takes a second, but by the time I can actually hear the words being said, I can't help but bark out laughing. "It's just the stars' damned necromancers," I manage to choke out in between breaths, as Blue starts to back away from me like I'm possessed. "What?" His lip quivers, and I have to fight for a sliver of composure so I can explain better. "This happens near the end of each semester and around Spirits Crawl. It's a thing they do," I explain, wiping a tear from my eye. "They're trying to commune with the spirits. We got a notice about it from the school. Said it should be happening any day now." "And they can just do that?" Blue asks incredulously, staring out at the narrow portion of the street that we can see from our alleyway as though they could be passing by at any time. "What, wave incense around and ring bells? No law against that." I shrug. I suppose I could see how someone might try to call that public indecency, especially because there's no actual set day except for Spirits Crawl. "But that really lets them commune with spirits?" Blue speaks in a scandalized whisper, and now that I know what he's really asking, I can't help but fall into another fit of giggles. "Oh, hell no!" I answer. As far as I know, these little walkabouts have never really been successful. It's pretty much the worst way to try and talk with a spirit. Certainly the least effective. It's a fun exercise, and it really brings the small division together. It doesn't hurt, so no harm, no foul. We go around the necromancers as much as we can. Not that I argue much against it. We've made it this far without someone from the school seeing us. I don't know why we would go out of our way to ruin a perfect record. Even though their chanting and bone-rattling doesn't really do anything, Blue still seems unsettled. I have to remind him that there is still one necromancer he does actually like. One necromancer we do like. The neon body paint is a hell of a lot harder to take off than it was to put on, but it gives me time to think. As fun as it was to have a night off, it doesn't exactly change the fact that I do still have work waiting for me. We still have the last of our actual finals for the semester, another week of classes that'll mostly consist of teachers trying to wrangle students that have already mentally checked out. I'll have to deal with the magic surges coming back. I hold out hope that the resurgence was simply because of the high-stress situation. I was drunk and not thinking very clearly. And I have been rather lax with my tea and meditations lately, I reprimand myself. Like any of that really worked anyways. If nothing else, I at least have the solution to Jet's problem, and a solution to the self-imposed one that stands in my way. Blue's already passed out on the bed. I don't blame him. It's been a hell of a night for him. I just hope it was fun. He's switched out my clothes for yet more of my clothes, as the nightshirt that's oversized on me fits him like a dress. I press a kiss to his head, freeing up one of the pins he'd missed when he pulled off the hat, and make myself a silent promise that I'll join him just as soon as I'm done. It feels odd sneaking around inside my own house, but I don't want to make the stairs creak and alert Blue to the fact that I'm going back down into the workshop. Everything's exactly as I left it, and I scoop up the report, filling out its cover page and setting up all the right attributions. I'll be damned if all of this is dismissed on a technicality. I double seal it in an envelope before I pack it in with the 3 samples and tape up the box. As I set it by the door, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding in. I can't believe this is over. That this solution, however slapdash and temporary, is going to help my brother. It took longer than I'd hoped, so I can only pray it's not too late. I drum my fingers over the packing tape. It'll be fine, I reassure myself. No one really gets hurt over little white lies.